SELINTalks, podcast initiative by SELINT. In today's episode of our podcast, we are featuring Dr. Toby Travis, an experienced educator, academic leader, and author of Trusted, The Bridge to School Improvement. Dr. Travis is committed to promoting authentic and quality Christian education. And as a successful professional development trainer, he is dedicated to helping schools and educators achieve their goals through continual data-informed improvements. Join us as we explore Dr. Travis's insight and expertise on leadership, professional development, and school improvement. To begin with, for our audience, I would like you to talk about a bit of your background and how did you get interested in education leadership altogether?
Well, I think my interest in, well, first of all, just getting into education really was the influence of teachers, just the influence of amazing people who poured into my life and kind of inspired me to want to do the same for others. Once in the classroom, though, I think my very first school setting where I was a teacher, and I was a bit surprised, to be honest, at the poor work environment, just the relationship between administration and faculty was broken. And I remember setting up my classroom. This was before kids were on campus. It was like, the week or 2 weeks before school. And I'm excited to be there. I'm all pumped about having my classroom all ready and jazzed for the kids. And I hear conversations out in the hallway that really, I could just best describe as bickering, just nasty language. And it was all about school leadership. And I'm like, wow, this is not a happy place for people to be working in. And what happened, though, Shruti, is within a short amount of time, I was invited to join that leadership. And I'm like, oh, okay, but I think some things have got to change. And it wasn't just about me. There actually was kind of a movement going on in the school at that time of kind of re-identifying itself. And really the senior leadership was very, very supportive of faculty. But a lot of things had broken. A lot of promises that had not come true, or expectations in which teachers were hired in earlier years did not come to fruition. And so there were just a lot of broken promises, a lot of disappointed people. So we needed to focus in how do we restore trust and confidence in teachers. And so I've had a passion on this whole topic of building trust from the get-go. It ended up being my doctoral dissertation years later. But right from the early years in education and educational leadership, I saw, no, this is the issue. And if we don't get this right, nothing else is going to work. So that's kind of how it all began.
Right. Did you ever plan, like when you were studying, when you were in school, did you ever think that you're going to choose an education leadership or education sector altogether in your career? How did you come to realize it?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because that's a question I ask, now that I do leadership trainings and I have school principals and superintendents and division administrators in a room. I think recently I did a training that was sponsored by University of Pennsylvania, and I probably had 150 school administrators in this room. And I asked the question, I said, how many of you, same question, when you were in undergrad or graduate school, your ambition was to become a school leader? No one raised their hand, right? And that true for me too. That was my ambition, was instructional. I wanted time with kids, and I wanted to have an influence as a teacher. But to lead a school, no, that wasn't the plan. But it's where we end up, because we realize the needs. Hopefully that's what motivates most of us. I know for some, it is a pathway to a financial career. Unfortunately, in teaching, largely teachers are underpaid, and when it comes down to how am I going to provide for my family and develop my career financially, about all that's open to us is a path in administration. And so that is a motivator for many. But hopefully, and I believe of the best, it's no, I want to have an impact on what education looks like for our kids today and for their future.
Wow. I mean, that's the biggest motivation of all. And I think the teachers being underpaid, it's like a global issue that everybody's, be it United States, be it in India, teachers and educators and people who are imparting knowledge are being underpaid. That's the issue that we really need to work on as a community altogether. Yeah. So your book, Trusted, The Bridge to School Improvement, explores a lot of importance in building trust in school community. How did you come up with the idea, and what was the whole, frame or mind frame around it? How did you come up with it?
Well, I have to give my wife some great credit for the analogy of the bridge. I'd gone through going back again, I've recognized for years this critical importance of high levels of trust are just key to everything else. And what has borne out over the years of studying other research and of course doing my own studies, you look at school improvement initiatives, and currently in North America, 70% of school improvement initiatives fail. The vast majority fail. And then when you dive in to figure, okay, why? Well, you learn it's all about execution. And then when you dive into that, it's well, what is it about that's not being executed well? It's all about leadership. So,
Yeah.
and the inverse is true. When trust levels are high, and school leaders own the change, they own the initiatives, they're invested deeply in engaging and valuing staff in the process, all kinds of wonderful things start happening. So, I had seen this and experienced it anecdotally, and then dove into research for a number of years. And really the bottom line there, Shruti, if I can encapsulate all the years of study and research onto one statement, it is this finding: the number one indicator of successful schools is trusted leadership. Let me say it again. The number one indicator of successful schools is trusted leadership. And what's really fascinating about the research, it doesn't seem to matter how we define the word success. So if a school says, we're defining our success by student achievement levels, you look at those schools where we have the highest levels of student achievement, and guess what we find? Highly trusted leaders. If school success is defined by teacher retention, and there I mean retention of quality teachers, well, guess what you find? Those are schools with highly trusted leaders. And on it goes. Whatever metric you use to identify school success, we have found a direct correlation to high levels of trust in leadership. Well, trust is complex. It's not, we're using a very small word to talk about really many things. And that was, why there's been so much research in this area and study. And what I was looking for was, how do we assess it? How do we intentionally get a barometer, if you will, of where our trust level is as a leader, so that we've got some data to then drive improvement? And so that's really the work behind the whole trusted framework was, okay, how do we categorize it? How do we identify it? How do we measure it? And then we've got data to work with. And really what the book talks about is we've discovered there are 6 major components of trust, and they're interleaving. They work together. They're not isolated elements, but there's definitely 6 specific components of trust. Well, it's complex. So I remember sitting at the dinner table talking with my wife saying, all right, I know what these things are, but you have to be able to talk about it in a way that people can get their minds and their arms around it, as it were. And I said, I need a visual illustration of this. And she goes, well, isn't it really just like a suspension bridge? You've got to have the foundation, you've got to have the deck, you've got to have the superstructure. And I'm like, yes. And so I spent about 3 months learning everything I could learn about bridges, just to say, okay, would this really work as a visual metaphor? And it does. And so what the book basically unpacks is, how do you build this bridge of trusted leadership, and talk about these 6 components using the analogy of the construction of a suspension bridge. And it really does help us get our heads around it. So, for example, and I won't go through the whole metaphor, but the foundation are the values and the beliefs of school leadership and of schools. So just like a bridge needs a solid foundation, so do leaders. You've got to have a solid, you've got to know what you know, and you've got to believe it, and it's got to be authentic, and it's got to be solid. But then a bridge has a substructure, and the function of the substructure is to connect everything of the bridge to the foundation. Well, the substructure of trusted leadership is all about connecting and supporting everything you're doing in the school with what you believe and what your values are. And this is where trust is so frequently broken. Is we say we're one thing. We say we believe this, we believe that. This is what we believe is best about education. This is what we say we believe about students and parents. But then what we do as a leader or as a school is not in alignment and connected to what we say we believe. Yeah, trust is broken. And so that's the metaphor that we go through. The deck of the bridge is all about communication and clarity. You're just like driving across the bridge. You expect it to be clear. You should know what lane you're in and what direction you're going and when you're out of bounds of that lane. Same thing in trusted leadership. It's very clear. We know where we're going. We know what our lane is. We know what the benchmarks are. Good leaders, trusted leaders, they're very clear in their direction. There's orderly systems, and that's the deck of the bridge of leadership. Make sense?
A lot. I mean, when you talk about it about a bridge, and I was imagining it how it actually works. Because when you think of a bridge, you talked about foundation, you talked about the roads, you talked about everything that is going to be leading from A to B, and the promises, and such a small thing that I think a lot of us, in be it in corporates or be it in education system or be it the interlink between the two, I think we keep forgetting that when we're communicating, be it in our marketing communication, we are promising something and the deliveries are entirely different. The gap is too long, I think. Because
One
when
of
you
the
were talking,
strategies when I'm coaching and consulting school leaders is I help them identify what's a promise you can make that you can deliver on very quickly. Because how is either trust repaired or even how it's built is you make a promise, you keep it. You make a promise, you keep it. So if you're in a situation where you need to rebuild trust in that school, then we start looking, okay, what are some promises that you can make to teachers, to students, to parents, and then deliver on it literally in weeks. So there's not that long delay between what we're promising and what, when we say, we're going to provide a world-class education for our kids to prepare them, for their future. Well, that's a nice promise. There's no quick deliverable on that, though, right? So that isn't what builds trust. What builds trust is I know the value, let's say, of arts and education. We know that students who study music also do better in math. So we're going to take this as a principle and we're going to deliver this in our school. We identify what we believe as our best practices and we actually do it and we measure it. That's how trust is built.
very simply and nicely put, because I even like a simple, like a person who's a layman who can understand all of these, I think that's the biggest of all, like understanding these criterias. And I think it is there everywhere, like no matter where you're working, you're in an education system, you're a parent, you're a teacher, it should be like an automated thing. When you think about it, I'm sure your book is, I'm surely going to read, because I think the insights that you're giving me are very, very precious, and I want to, kind of integrate it here as well. So I think very brilliant analogy, must say.
Well, and it has universal application. So I think this is why the book has ended up in Forbes and Business Inc. magazine. And it's gotten attention I never expected or anticipated, but because the principles are universal. But in the book, of course, all of the illustrations and the applications are in school leadership. And I'm sitting on the shoulders of giants, Shruti, because the Marzano Group, for example, has done tremendous work in looking at school leadership research. In fact, they did a meta-analysis 20 some years ago that has been repeated by several other groups now over the years. I think as recently as 2018 was the last time it was done. But out of those studies, we actually know the specific skill sets and competencies that must be in place for school leaders to drive school improvement. Well, the Trust Ed framework took a look at those skill sets and competencies and then found the correlations, connections to these 6 components of trust. So this is where, again, and I know I'm probably sounding a little, geekish here, but what gets exciting for me then as a data guy is, okay, we actually can go in now, we can assess the specific behaviors, competencies, skill sets of these school leaders and actually help increase their levels of trust where it might be weak. And I've just seen wonderful transformations of schools that I've worked with, personally led, and also those that I've consulted with, that they have seen incredible school improvement, not through some initiative like what I was just saying, where you're introducing, music literacy or something, but rather they see the school improvement is driven by focusing on the development of trust in their leaders. Because we get that one right, and what you find is there's higher levels of innovation. Teachers dive in deeper when they trust their leaders and they know, hey, I can make a mistake here and I'm going to be okay because I'm investing in the school, I'm investing in kids. When you get those high levels of trust and leadership, again, all kinds of good things start happening. And we've got to get that right first. And we now, I really believe and have seen that we have the tools to do that. It's not just some sort of soft skill, nebulous thing that you hope someone becomes trusted. No, we know how to get them there.
Very data driven, I must say. I'm going to encourage our educators that are linked with us in our networking. I would encourage them that they should reach out to you, because I think this is a very big thing that we are not actually acknowledging right now, because this needs the acknowledgement that we require, because I think that it starts there. Like you said, it's the foundation. It's not the whole building, it's not the whole bridge. It starts from the foundation, and like you said, that it actually works towards the success of a school and institution altogether. So I think that totally encouraging our network here. And yeah, okay, apart from that, did COVID 19 pandemic kind of made a shift, like especially in the results, in the assessment that you're doing, the coaching that you did? How was the shift like? I think I'm sure everybody was very, very stressed. It was one of the most stressful thing that could happen to planet Earth altogether. But how was there any motivation factor in the coaching, like the people who were attending your coaching, and what was it like altogether?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So in what we would call the public sector, or the government-funded schools, um, they really suffered. I mean, and I have great empathy. I work in the private sector as a school administrator myself, and we have so much more freedom and flexibility in the private sector that my public counterparts just did not have. And so it made their job all the more challenging. And of course, that meant all the more open to more criticism. But
Right.
their ability to respond in a way that met the needs of all students really, really challenging. And so what we did see definitely is a level of trust that dropped markedly in the public school sector. We have seen a surge in private school enrollment here as a result of that. But even there, from school to school, how they managed did look different. But certainly those schools that excelled in communication, excelled in trying to find solutions and resource and support for teachers and students. They had the opportunity, and we saw it happen in many cases where trust
Yeah.
levels went up because they were being responsive to teacher needs. And that really is the critical element in school success, is always thinking, how does this impact our teachers? School leaders, they've got to ask that question with everything that comes across their desk, because really our schools are our teachers. It's not our building, it's not our
Right.
curriculum, it's not our technology. The school is the teachers. So this is our number one resource that we've got to care for, process every decision through. And when we do that, when teachers excel, everything else works great.
Very true. I mean, everything set apart, like, they are the ones running the show altogether. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being a part of our episode. It's an honor.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. It's my honor.